My Life as a Social Experiment, Episode 9. If you were here for the last, 20, 30 minutes, you would have seen my process of having a really good idea to ripping it up metaphorically and throwing it in the fire, to walking myself out to the edge of the bridge, tying a cinder block to my ankle, and considering jumping off, all in the span of maybe 10 minutes. And as I noticed that process happening and getting to a point where I was going to give up everything, I was going to throw it all away, this stupid podcast, nobody wants to hear what I want to say. I'm finally, I'm just going to talk. And that's been the whole point of this all along. And I can't even follow my own guidelines. So if you're out there thinking, boy, how does Molly have it all put together? Gee whiz, I wish I could wear a nice dress and talk on stage and book bands and do all these fancy things. Well, you got me all wrong, because I am a hot mess. And I'm tired of it. So I'm going to tell you all about how I'm a hot mess and why it's important to find value in yourself before it's too late. So I guess that's my focus, and we'll see how many times I loop around and derail. I guess that's the fun part, is waiting for the derailment, honestly. And you know what? I like the derailment. And it's who I am. So I just was flipping through Facebook, because when you don't know what to do with your time or with yourself, or if you've lost your focus, or if you think that you just can't accomplish anything meaningful, you start scrolling through Facebook like it's Entertainment Weekly. It's worthless information for the most part, but it gives you something to look at and to distract you from the fact that you just considered throwing yourself off a bridge with a cinder block tied around your ankle. So it's quite a web we weave when we're fighting with ourselves, and then tantalizing ourselves with scrolling and media and fancy stars and their really nice outfits and hair. Just to avoid throwing ourselves into, Connecticut River. Is there a bridge high enough over the Connecticut River? Oh, the Quechee Gorge. I was just there, actually, the other day, and took note, and actually had a moment of silence for all the people who have come to a place in their mind where they feel like the only thing to do is to huck themselves off a bridge and land on a rock in order to kill themselves. What does it take? How much do you need to bear to get to that point when your mind is like, you know what? I find it rational at this point. It is logical and rational for this mind to end itself. I mean, honestly, there are no other species on the planet that I know of that commit suicide. And so that to me is a red flag flaw. And that is, it goes against all logic. So there's got to be some misstep, some fault in our evolution. That's a discussion for another day. Remind me if you want to hear me talk about that, or if you want to discuss that, remind me, because I often do not go back and listen to my podcasts as a rule, and because I don't want to. I don't make that rule because I want to and I want to not do it. I just don't. So I'm off the rails a little bit. Just a little. Suicide, Quechua Gorge. This seems to be a theme for me, is where I'm like, what happened? Where did I go? Where was I? I really don't know. Okay, yes, cinder block tied around the ankle. That's how I got to the Quechua Gorge, and how it's a well-known place for folks to end their lives. And they've actually done a really good job, as far as I know. I mean, I am not in the business of suicide prevention in terms of like physical barriers. And what they've done is put a fence up, and they've got some signage that says, if you need help, call this number. And they have an emergency assistance button, and they have some business cards that you can take away and call the number for help. So it was a surreal experience to be there and to know that. And I'm not sure how many people with out-of-state plates know what a suicidal hotspot Quechua Gorge is. And as a Vermonter, I know. So being there was just a moment to memorialize the people who thought it rational to huck themselves off a bridge. Anyway, to back up, I mean, I'm talking about doing a podcast, and I've slipped into this conversation about committing suicide, and I think they are related, because doing this podcast for me is super important. It's very important because I don't have time to write. And I say that, and I'm sure someone would argue, well, if you have time to drink wine, you could sit down and write. Well, I can't, because I don't know, my brain doesn't work that way. Writing is too slow for me to get out what I need to say and to make the connections that need to be made. So stop judging me, okay? So this podcast is very important, and it's very personal. And I do get to that point right before I hit record where I go back and forth whether this is important or not. And I was scrolling through Facebook. Scrolling through Facebook, and I saw this video. And I'm not going to delve off into a conversation about why Facebook is nutty. I did that in an earlier podcast, and I deleted it because I got ramped up. I got angry. Anyway, so I was scrolling through the Facey, like it was Entertainment Weekly of the good old days. And there's a video of a man on the beach with his daughter, and the daughter is up on his shoulders, and you know, the caption underneath the video is "at the right place at the right time." And he's on the beach, and there in the distance you can see a sea turtle up on the beach. And then he starts to run toward it, but he runs past it, and just past this sea turtle is another sea turtle that is on its back and covered in sand. I mean, sea turtles, when they're trying to flip themselves over, it obviously tossed sand on top of itself and was completely camouflaged. And so the man noticed it, and he ran over, and he and his buddy flipped this ginormous sea turtle over and sent it back into the ocean. And that's just one example of several and many that are from people who are listening now. Like I see your posts about your events and family stuff and your hardships and your positive stuff. And I think I do not matter in this grand scheme. But I would advocate that you matter in this grand scheme. So why would I not do the same for myself? I don't understand. And you probably have the same conversation with yourself, I'm guessing. And it's a weird place to be. And again, I feel like it's a flaw of human intelligence and it has a lot to do with culture as well. You know, because we are an individualist society. And if you are not making it and killing it on your own, then you're kind of a nobody, right? And then this social media stuff where you can curate your own museum of Molly. You know, I can curate my museum of Molly on the Facey, and I can pick all the pictures that are great of me, and I can write hashtag blessed. I've had such a great day with my kids. None of them are on devices, and so today wrote a haiku, and so won a championship, blah, blah, blah. I could totally do that, and people do. They can curate their Facebook page, and you would go on it and think that this person is living the best life ever, and it's not true. And again, I don't know how I got to the Facey. And I wasn't going to talk about Facebook because it bothers me so much that I get completely irrational. Individualist societies. We are in an individualist society, and I am not going to argue against the individualist society. That is not my point tonight, because there are societies that are, like caste systems, which do not recognize the individual, which are wrong. So I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to speak about what's right or wrong in terms of that. I'm just saying that our individualist society in a culture where, everyone is self-aggrandizing, it's pushed upon us to do so. It's pushed upon us to be unique and stand out. And yeah, so that's an underlying current that we might not be aware of, that social media pushes. Okay, so individual society. How did I get there? Jesus Christ. Jesus, take the wheel, because I am too drunk to drive. I'm just kidding. That's all I could think of as a joke right now, because I can't remember my train of thought. But I am talking about self-value and how to value yourself and to balance it with valuing everyone else at the same time. I think it's a moral and ethical seesaw in the human brain, in the human mind. If you're not a sociopath, I'm hoping that you are going through these exercises as to how important my situation is in comparison to the greater whole. And so today I'm in a bookstore, and there's section upon section of biographies. People have written about themselves, autobiographies, bios. People's stories are important. And I know that. If you've listened to the Moth Radio Hour and you love it as much as I do, you want to hear people talk about themselves. And I wonder if those people who are talking about themselves, who, we want more. Tell me more about your life. Tell me more. I mean, I could listen to Moth forever. How many of them are thinking inside their head, nobody cares, or I shouldn't be saying this, because there are other things going on in the world that just this doesn't even line up. But I think there's a place for everyone's story. And I know that. But I don't believe it for myself. I don't. I know that I don't, especially today, after going back and forth on whether I should speak into this phone or not. I mean, why? Why? What is the point? And my situation, just like yours, everyone's is different. I've written in journals for years and years and years, but that's for me. That's for personal use. And some of the journals are not meant for my children to find, and some of them are meant for them to find. And I've always done that. I've always had this motivation to write about the minuscule, the pixels in everyday life. But at the same time, writing for someone else, writing for a child. Let's say if you're writing, you are detailing the early days of your firstborn, and every yawn, every sneeze, every outing is all documented. Every first word, every made up word, all of the bits and pieces that you find important